Hey everybody, welcome back. This is your favorite journalist, Tabitha, and I've got news. It's not breaking news, but it's news. Remember Senator Rand Paul? Rand Paul, who was beaten to a pulp by his neighbor? So bad that he ended up in the hospital for a few days with some cracked ribs. They had some type of altercation, a neighborly type altercation. I read an article where Rand Paul was doing ish to piss off his neighbor. You know, the neighbor would move certain things off of his property, and Rand Paul would then move those things back onto his property. Rand Paul would do lawn work and would have the leaves blown over to the neighbor's side of the lawn or the property line. Yeah, just doing little things to annoy the neighbor. And then one day, Rand Paul just tapped on that one last nerve, and the neighbor wore his ass out. Rand Paul was very popular during the Trump years, specifically when we were in the pandemic dealing with COVID-19. See, Rand Paul used Dr. Fauci and the COVID pandemic to make himself known. He was along the same lines as Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Matt Gaetz. You know, they use certain issues, certain people to keep their name out there amongst the MAGA crowd. And for Rand Paul, the person that he used was Dr. Fauci, and the issue he used was COVID-19. Rand Paul continuously had Dr. Fauci up there testifying in committee hearings in regards to the origins of COVID-19. You know, Republicans believe that it was a bat over in China at one of the food marks. That's one conspiracy theory that they use. And the other is that China made COVID-19 in a Wuhan lab. Both of those instances are conspiracy theories. Nobody has been able to validate or prove that either one of those instances are or is the truth. But yet, Rand Paul used it anyway. He used it to incite the base to continuously attack Dr. Fauci in support of Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. Why is Rand Paul back in the news? Rand Paul is in the news because he did a video and he put it up over on his Twitter account. And in that video, he dogged out Nikki Haley and he endorsed Donald Trump. Anybody out there that believes that Rand Paul would have endorsed any other candidate? Is there one? Yeah. I didn't think so. And because Rand Paul came out and officially endorsed Donald Trump, he has gained 5 more minutes of fame. And using his 5 minutes of fame, what does he do? He doesn't talk about any issue that we are currently dealing with that we really need to focus on. He's not talking about anything like that. What is Rand Paul saying now that he's got 5 minutes of spotlight time? Rand Paul is saying that Dr. Anthony Fauci deserves to go to prison over dishonesty over the COVID-19 origins. That's what Rand Paul wants to talk about. Reminder, Dr. Fauci retired back in December of 2022. Dr. Fauci has retired and has moved on to spend life with his family and his friends, and he's not concerned about what is happening with politicians, the United States government, or COVID-19. Well, I'm sure with the numbers increasing with COVID-19 that he is speaking to people about COVID-19, probably his close family and friends, making sure that they are taking all of the necessary precautions to protect themselves from getting COVID-19. But he's not thinking about Rand Paul. He's not thinking about Congress. He's not thinking about the government in general. But Rand Paul, who is basically a nobody at this point. No one's talking about Rand Paul. No one's slapping Rand Paul on the back. No one's calling Rand Paul for an interview. So what does he do? He invokes the one thing that riles up the base to get them talking about him. Yeah. And it worked. On Twitter today, Rand Paul is trending, and all of the Trump MAGA nuts are giving him attaboys for how he would take Dr. Fauci to task. Rand Paul, what is he? A dentist? An orthopedist? What is he? It doesn't matter. Anywho, now that I explained all of what's going on, I'm going to leave you with this. The only reason why I brought this story into you is because Rand Paul is trending. And since Rand Paul is trending, I want to remind each and every one of you that John McCain called out Rand Paul and told the world on the Congress floor that Rand Paul was a Russian asset. Y'all remember when Rand Paul took that closed letter that Donald Trump had for Vladimir Putin? He took that letter and personally delivered it to Vladimir Putin in Russia. Y'all remember that? Well, I'll leave you with this video of John McCain officially calling out Rand Paul and saying that he is a Russian asset, and he did it on the Congress floor.
Mr. President, if there is objection, and I note the senator from Kentucky on the floor, I will say before I read this, if there is objection, you are achieving the objectives of Vladimir Putin. You're achieving the objectives of trying to dismember this small country that has already been the subject of attempted coup. I have no idea why anyone would object to this, except that I will say, if they object, they are now carrying out the desires and ambitions of Vladimir Putin, and I do not say that lightly. So, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that at a time to be determined by the majority leader in consultation with the Democratic leader of the Senate, proceed to executive session to consider calendar number 1, Montenegro Treaty Document 11-114-12, that the treaty be considered as having advanced through the various parliamentary stages up to and including the presentation of the resolution of ratification, that any committee declarations be agreed to as applicable, that there be no amendments in order to the treaty or the resolution of ratification, that there be 2 hours for debate, equally divided in the usual form. Upon the use of yielding back of time, the Senate proceed to vote on the resolution, that any statements be printed in the record as if read, that if the resolution of ratification is agreed to, the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table, that the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action, that if the resolution is not agreed to, the treaty will be returned to the calendar, and that there be no motions or point of order in order, and a motion to reconsider, and then the Senate then resume legislative session.
Mr. President, is the Senator from Kentucky?
I object.
Objection is heard.
Mr. President, I note the Senator from Kentucky leaving the floor without justification or any rationale for the action that he has just taken. That is really remarkable. That a senator blocking a treaty that is supported by the overwhelming number, perhaps 98 at least, of his colleagues, would come to the floor and object and walk away. And walk away. The only conclusion you can draw when he walks away is he has no argument to be made. He has no justification for his objection to having a small nation be part of NATO that is under assault from the Russians. So I repeat again, the senator from Kentucky is now working for Vladimir Putin.
That's a Republican I respected. There are no more Republicans like John McCain. That's sad.